first yellow piece of paper.
We don't have a yellow.
It's before the first yellow. Right here, two yellow.
No, we don't have yellow there.
Ours is in the paper order.
That's interesting. That was on personnel matters.
You know, Michael. See, here's the yellow. Here's just the four.
That's true.
It's right after the list of names and all.
I copied that from the lead temple.
We all got it, right?
I don't know.
You
I do know
can
that
them
one
real
of the
quick.
books
Thank you.
after is where she got it.
So that was the one if you look at the second page of the minutes, under unfinished business, I think items C and D, we didn't go over, we ran out of time.
This is under institutional effectiveness performance.
Oh, is that what it is?
Yes.
That's all, okay.
So
It was in that subdivision,
Right,
okay.
Thank you, Bill.
Well, that wasn't discussed at the last item, the only thing that was discussed was the student performance items.
We did a lot of shifting around and we discussed it.
Is there on the next page,
This
in
year.
the new business, is the,
If your pen was trying to be you.
I see.
She is better Ron than Ron can ever do.
We didn't actually talk about the last two items because it was arranged and what the information they had there was not correct and.
She
So
was
it's
trying
on
to
the
be Ron.
agenda again, so we can just let you know what is gonna be going into this.
I mean, she sort of looks like Ron, sometimes Ron sort of looks like.
But Ron is here.
But Ron is here.
I will address it.
I think it's the authority and the knowledge that she brings for that carries.
It's the presence. There's definitely a presence there.
Definitely a presence.
Is that what we call him, Ron? We missed Ron in last meeting. Okay. Can I have a motion to approve minutes with no changes?
I actually think that I would prefer to just take E out since we're doing them today, instead of having them listed as having been discussed at the last meeting.
Because they weren't. Under unfinished business.
Yes, we really discussed A, but we didn't, and I mean, B is not anything, there's nothing really to discuss besides, yes, we want that fully accredited. But the rest of it, we didn't really present or discuss on that, and so it's a little bit unclear to have it listed here when we're really gonna talk about it today.
It was, sorry, you had a lengthy conversation about that, and some of you said that it has to come back next meeting. So it's recorded, sorry.
So your recommendation is to leave it in there?
Yeah, because you guys discussed it.
I remember Pam talked about it somewhat. I know that meeting feels like a year ago, but. Did anybody else remember?
I think maybe you should advertise business and leave it as agenda item. Because we didn't discuss it. I thought we discussed it.
Pam discussed it. There was no Pam.
I think though, that what I recall is that Pam did try to answer some questions on it, but those items were not actually things that were presented. And when it's here, presented this way, it looks as if we actually discussed the board policy on fund balance between 5 and 9%, and that it's not exactly, it wasn't so it puts into the minutes something that the intent is not actually clear about what happened.
Okay, any other discussion? I see Go Herb. Go Herb, do you wanna comment? Please?
In the institutional effectiveness module that we have to go in, you have to put in a percentage, and you put in whatever the balance is, fund balance, and we simply just discussed that for our board policy, it's 5 to 9%, but what do we actually mark into this document? So, and we didn't have an answer because Ron wasn't there.
We
That
don't
was
have a
all.
specific number, but we
No.
said 5 to 9%.
Yeah,
which is
we
what's
just
in
knew
there.
that, this is what our board policy states, but we don't know what we're gonna be putting in here as a whole. And so we decided to bring it back.
So maybe what we can say is maybe we can add a line that says, brief discussion held on items B, C, and D, bringing them forward to the next meeting for more information. Would that work for everybody?
It does not,
I have another suggestion. So when you turn the page, and you see at the top the thing off the web, right? It's really clear that this isn't representing, this is an illustration that was shown at the meeting, right? And so it's telling you, okay, here's what we looked at and discussed. And I think really the same thing is going on here. The student performance and outcomes, all the items listed under there go with that. If you put a box around it, right, to make it clear that this little list of A, B, C, and D doesn't necessarily represent what people at this table said. It's representing, here are the items that are part of that, of the box, right? So if you put it in a box, then it's clear that this is an object that's been embedded into the agenda rather than a representation of the conversation. That's my suggestion.
So your suggestion is to take it out?
No, it's to put a box around it to show that it's actually an object that was discussed rather than a recording line by line of what was said.
Okay, so it seems that the changes that are being proposed is that we put a box around the image, okay?
Around, starting
Around this
with,
image,
no, ABC.
around this image, around the A, B, C, D.
I think your question was BCD.
In question for me about what was discussed was that this looks like BC and D actually had discussion, but
So if you put a box,
I also understand the other interpretation.
And so,
Putting a box around the whole.
the whole thing, A, B, C, and D, shows here's an object that was presented. And then we discussed it, and we didn't discuss all of it thoroughly, we discussed
so
some of
we
it.
had a brief discussion on it, we went back and forth on
Yes.
some items. So I
Yes.
think it's important to know that we had a brief discussion because that's recorded. So I think that's important to note. So that we can, any other comments from this side? No? Okay. So the recommendation is that we approve the minutes with a modification of putting it in the box and adding a little statement on the bottom that says a brief discussion was held on items A through D with the thought of bringing them forth to the May 21st meeting for further discussion. Is everybody okay with that? So, okay, can I have a motion to that, please? You just have to say something. Okay, is there a second? Okay, all those in favor, please raise your right hand. Okay, all those opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, motion passes. Thank you, Grace. Did you get everybody, Grace? All right, very good. Next, we move on to the chair report. I wanted to report on the internal and external survey. The last meeting, I gave you a copy of the internal and external surveys. I didn't know if you had them, but I just wanted to give it to you to refresh our minds on it again. It's on the landing page of the PGC, and I believe Grace has already opened it. So the survey is open now, and according to one of our action items, we were gonna do the same survey again this year. What we do need to agree on as a
It's not no one's here.
Well-
Excuse me.
The students and the faculty are gone. And it's not that no one's here, but we're trying to get all the constituents, 1,700 faculty and thousands of students are not here. So if we can find a way, maybe to leave it open through the end of the first week of summer school and do another big push to people who fill it out then, the faculty and students. I don't know, it depends on what kind of response we get.
Well, I think that is needed.
I'm just-
And I think the last one, last year, there wasn't that many people, that took the survey. Grace, do we know how many, maybe it's just a few, wasn't it?
871.
Yeah, 300, I mean, I'm hoping we can have some more.
Especially students, I mean, when students are gonna have to do it.
Extending it out till summer.
Like the first week, and then we've got to push out a reminder to faculty and students who are checking the email there about adding classes to please go. Maybe.
Is there some kind of a deadline around this? Is there a deadline that you have to have information by, or it's just kind of? I think that if we get it flexible in the summer, I mean, we're okay. You know, we don't take that much time to calculate it, I think we're okay. Try to get as many as we can, maybe better than last year. So, it's really up to us how long we want to do that. I think we're okay. Yeah, go ahead.
I think in terms of the timeliness, what you wanna keep in mind is that you use the information to make changes and improvements in the fall. So that in the fall, those changes are implemented and then you can see, okay, did it make a difference, is it better when you do survey again later? So you wanna make time for conversation if you're making changes.
So even if we go through the summer, we're still okay, leaving it open so we can get, and then what we can also do is we can work with Jeff, to see if he can help us send that message out. So we can try to get as many, students and faculty to fill it out. So is everybody good with like the first or second week of,
Let's see, June meeting of the PEC. That might be a nice,
hold on.
tie it in with our.
Grace, do you have that in front of you, the June meeting?
Mm-hmm.
Or a couple of.
We have 2 meetings in June.
4th and 18.
I'm sorry.
4 and 18.
4 and 18.
So maybe close it on the 18th. That's 3 days after school starts.
Well,
Close it on the 20th.
maybe we give them a week after school starts. How about a week? So what's that following week, Grace?
18?
25?
Is there,
Fine. June, we're talking about June 25th. You know what, let's just do it up to Friday, make it the end of the week. June 26th, will everybody work for June 26th? Okay, so we're gonna close it on June 26th, and we're gonna work with Jeff to get a message out. Maybe we could do more than one. Okay, great, thank you. All right, very good. Next, I'd like to move on to awards and recognitions. I think I'd like to recognize all the wonderful graduations that are taking place. I know this evening we have a lavender graduation. Hopefully this meeting can end so we can attend the lavender graduation. But I attended a transitional studies graduation at John Adams and very briefly admission. And I know there's other ones, with Guardian Scholar and so I'm gonna go around real quick and whoever wants
important for our graduation, but, the compensation, honor the retiree, they don't wanna count, somewhere else, so that's kind of a commendable, that's the party was very small. That's the party, but I appreciate people who are served in our institution for 40 years in some cases.
And there was also the 10-year party, I think, was the for the last PGC? Or the last. Great, Karen, nothing, Lily?
I heard a rumor, I was not here, that Megan Corey yesterday at the emergency medical services event that was held here in DC from the Emergency Medical Services of the United States American University. So,
That's great. Confirm that and.
yes, I say that.
Confirm it and do a nice write-up, that's great. What was your name again?
Megan Corey,
COR.
CORRY.
Very good, so with that, any other words of information? So with that, I'll go ahead and, move on to consent agenda. Consent agenda are items that are on a second reading, and these items had discussion under, new business as a first reading. If there is no discussion, let me ask first, does anybody want to pull any items on the consent agenda? Okay, hearing none, can I just go ahead and have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
BP 6.23.
Let us see.
You want to pull C? Did you need clarification on it, or was it,
There's just some color,
okay. Any others? Anybody else? Okay, can I have a motion to approve A, B, D, and E, please?
I move approval.
Okay, second? All those in favor, please raise your right hand. All those opposed, please raise your right hand. Any abstentions? Very good, motion passes to approve consent agenda items A, B, D, and E. Now I'd like to go to item C, pulled by Alan. Alan?
I was just, reading this for the first time, apparently not read it when the first came around. And I was curious about, just the language. It was a little confusing when I read it, like, what are we making, subject for? It says under circumstances including, and then the third, bullet is extenuating circumstances. It almost repeats the language itself, so I don't know if there's a reason why the language is written that way, and I'm sorry if I missed the early dialogue.
Okay, Steve, did you want to answer that?
Well,
You know, why don't we do this? Grace, can you get that up on the screen?
so extenuating circumstances listed, and there's also something else.
Can I help you out? So these went through the Absent Senate, they were carried through by Deanna Adlet, who's the chair of our Education Policies Committee, and she's here today in case there's any questions about these particular instructional board policies and administrative procedures. Yes.
Okay.
And Jim or I could probably answer it, but it is language that is in Title V, and all these headings come straight out of Title V in terms of what's, and actually you don't have it in front of you, but the administrative procedure details what these are.
I do have a comment about that, what you just said.
Thank you.
Normally, the administrative procedure would accompany the policy. That's the way we try to present all of this material, and that would explain this in more detail than is in the policy.
And why are we not in this case?
The chancellor asked to hold on to that one, and he just wanted to read through it. And when we go back to our next consultation, we'll probably get that back from him.
And that's true for each of these? For 6.22, 6.22 has an 8.
Yes, that's the 6.24.
That was the only one that was a weird one. Not a weird one, but.
Well, and I believe that what he wanted added was, he just wanted another bit of language added, and it just needed to be process.
So there really wasn't, Alan, did you get your question answered?
Just that one, and I guess that's gonna be answered. The other one was a similar question between bullet point 4 and bullet point 8, occupational work experience. How is that different than significant changes in industry and licensure standards? And I wasn't so sure. But if it's out of Title V, then let's just
It's out of time.
go straight.
Then they're very different.
So you're good, Alan?
Yes.
Okay, great. I think
It's not a question, but I can think of an example that has happened recently in our department. We have these new, policies and procedures that prevent course repetition. But we had a student who almost made it through a class and had a car accident and wasn't able to finish the class. So now he has to come back and repeat the class because he missed the last 4 weeks. And it would be, normally, you'd have an accident, come back, but we have to have some way, the state's policy now to make it possible for that student.
Stephen, Colin?
That's just Title V, right? There have been changes to these recently, so I'm assuming it's just really updating the language. So, yeah.
Very good. So can I go ahead and have approval on item C? Motion?
There's a point of order. I believe that because this is an ASP, that the academic senate is receiving feedback from the students and it doesn't actually require a vote.
For the VP 6.2, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Am I correct? Anybody? My Jen?
Well, according to the current administrative procedure that is in force, this council is supposed to make recommendations on all policies and procedures. That is the current district policy and procedure on this subject. So that's all I can say. I know there's a recommendation to change that, but right now, that's the current policy.
So with that, let's go ahead and make, if there's no other discussion or disagreement, I'm sorry? Nothing to lose. Thank you, Francine. So can I have a motion? A second? Thank you, Alan. All those in favor? All those opposed? And we have one,
Yes.
Lillian, and any,
We have
Two
two
opposed.
opposed to voting on it. It's an
and
ASP
any,
item.
any abstentions? Three?
Three, who,
Lillian, Karen, and Tricia.
Lillian Tan.
Any extensions? Very good. All right, let's continue on to unfinished business. We have BP 1.25, campus selection, the second reading. Steve, were you gonna cover that one?
Yeah, I don't think there was any change proposed last time, so we just proceed. No further comment.
Does anybody have any comment or questions on BP 1.25? No, go ahead, Alan, that's what we're for.
I just philosophically have concerns when you have language in the P sheet. It's sort of a gender binary world, and it's not sort of technically we want to use policy that reflects that language. And that's a more helpful thing rather than a P sheet.
Any other comments?
I mean, but I would consider rewriting that language. And I have one.
I have it.
You have it? All right, thank you.
When the chancellor is absent, an acting chancellor will be appointed. And then it takes out the gender limit.
Oh, Or Jim?
Yeah, Jim, perhaps you could ask.
The chancellor felt, I discussed this particular item with him, that the last line in that particular paragraph, the board may change the acting chancellor at any time, would cover any potential desire to change the appointment. The issue has to do with the calendar. The board only meets once a month. They only can act once a month, and it has to be agendized. So it's difficult to deal with this 30-day as a mechanic. And he felt just giving the board the authority to do it whenever they meet and agendize it would satisfy the requirement for them to be able to do what they want for a longer-term absence.
Then I'm going to follow the board, just a quick question. The agenda for the board is set by the chancellor, so if an acting chancellor has been appointed, and the board is really not very happy with that particular acting chancellor, but the board is not setting their own agenda, it's the acting chancellor who's setting the agenda, how would the board even express, well, actually, we would rather we had somebody else as the acting chancellor?
Well, there's another policy that this one doesn't reference. It has to do with the agenda of the board, and it hasn't been presented to this council yet. And in fact, we just presented it to the chancellor recently. And so I'm answering your question prospectively. And in that particular recommended policy, the agenda will be set jointly by the chancellor and the president of the board of trustees. So the board has an opportunity to step in that agenda setting session to do what you're talking about.
Francine?
Well, given this conversation, is it possible to craft into this language that the chancellor would, of course, appoint an acting chancellor, and that this would be affirmed by the board at the following meeting, which could be a month later, but then it would be put on the agenda. That's our policy.
I don't have any problem with the language you're suggesting, if that's what you're
So
asking.
there's no break in calendar, but the board is fully involved. It must be involved, it's our policy.
So-
They could say, we love you and keep going, or they could have a discussion, or,
Right. I don't have any problem with your suggested language.
We could craft something into that paragraph that I think that would resolve what I'm hearing.
Any other questions or further discussion?
Should we say, not just the next meeting, should be affirmed at each board meeting then? I mean, or not each board meeting, but have the opportunity to affirm or change chancellor
The subsequent,
at a subsequent meeting.
at the next
Because
board meeting.
the language here,
They can come back, it's a first reading, so we just.
Actually, this is the second reading.
Second reading.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have to. We have to read it.
Let's talk about that wording again, Francine, say.
Well, I was thinking that in this paragraph, it says the board may change the acting chancellor at the time, which kind of goes without saying, that's enough. Instead, perhaps, this appointment will be agendized now, the board meeting following the appointment. So if the person was appointed on the first of the month, then that board meeting at the end of that month would be where it would be on the agenda for the board to affirm the change.
Lillian, yeah.
Okay. Jim, do you have any other additional comments on what Francine has just?
Lillian has a sentence.
Lillian has a
Well, if you want me, my only comment is procedural. If there's a desire to recommend an amendment to this language, you should, through Robert's Rules of Order, recommend specific language as an amendment.
It's right here, it's ready.
Okay. Any other discussion on this?
If we move this,
Okay, we haven't moved it yet, so you can go ahead and say it.
I'll move it.
Oh,
we have to move right.
Yeah, I move this policy. Now she's gonna.
Let's offer a friendly amendment.
Thank you.
To this policy. The first friendly amendment is that, to change the sentence when the chancellor is absent, an acting chancellor will be appointed. The second sentence, the acting chancellor will be approved by the board of trustees at the next regularly scheduled board meeting.
I accept that, it's very friendly.
Is there a second?
Well, you don't have to do that if it's friendly.
Okay, now that one's a new one for me, friendly motion, so we just approve.
We're very friendly over here.
If it's friendly, you don't have to vote on it.
We don't have to vote on
We
it?
would vote on the whole motion.
Okay.
And if we
As
debate it.
amended,
As
as
amended.
friendly with
So before, as we take, vote on the friendly amended motion, Steve, you've got.
Yeah, I did a comment on the first change that Lillian recommended. I think it's inadvertent, but you're changing the meaning. Because it currently says, when the chancellor is absent, he or she is delegated the authority to select. You change it to, an acting chancellor will be selected, so now it no longer says who will be doing the selecting.
You are right.
It's not active anymore. So I think if you just take out the he, she, and say the chancellor, you get the same results.
the chancellor is delegated.
There we go.
Any discussion on this? Okay, so that's part of the friendly motion, so let's go ahead and vote on the friendly amended motion. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Very good, all those opposed, please raise your right hand. One, Lonnie. Any, abstentions? Okay, very good, motion passes. So this item will not be on the consent agenda next meeting, okay? All right, just wanna make sure that's, because I had some last time, I'll second it. All right, very good. All right, so next,
Yes, yes,
we
ma'am.
go to item B, additional standing committees, capital projects, finance, information technology. This is Mr. Shred. We were gonna bring this back for additional discussion.
I asked for it. And I sent it.
So, okay,
So, however,
but there's another, are you, I ITAP committee came out with one of the work groups that were constituted after show cause. We worked all summer, this was in 2012, we worked all summer, we did a lot of work. This was one of the groups that was kept because the technology needs of the college weren't going to go away and there had to be discussion. So this group has been meeting ever since then, consistently talking about smart classrooms, single sign-on, replacing faculty computers, a lot of really important stuff. And during that entire period, the committee has been looking for the umbrella. And at first, one thought, oh, well, this is not going to be a problem, but then it kept getting put off semester after semester, year after year. And people are wondering why, when it's the only committee that Pam Fisher kept. When she dismantled all the committees that existed, she kept that one, because real work was happening there, and it was important. And the accreditors want us to have a clear line of authority, and when you have an important group that has nobody to report to, that doesn't give us a clear line of authority. So the question is, well, why? Why can't we report to PPC? And I'm a resource member, by the way, so I'm not a voting member. Thank you so much for your comment.
Yes, this was quite a discussion at the last ITAP, and including Jay Fields, did not understand why program is. So it is a question, why there would be any question about existing committees that are making recommendations, actually decisions about what professional development activities people all do, or the technology plan. All these things are going on that are hugely district-wide issues. So why would we have to stop and even ponder that they should be reporting to PGC when, to remind us, that's one of our accreditation problems, is a lack of a clear line. And it will come up with CC's class engage as well. But it's of concern that this has gone on now for 2 years.
Well, it's
There's
3
no
years.
standing, no place to report. And yet we are having professional development activities, we are rolling out computers and planning smart classrooms, and the tech plan draft is almost ready to bring somewhere, but no one knows where. I'm not clear why we have to continue to discuss that.
Okay. Thank you, Francine. So I think what I'd like to do, we're hearing from one constituency group, that they have not yet, with their constituency group, really discussed this. Is there, I'm sort of tempted to say maybe we give it a little bit of time so every group can go out and discuss it with their groups to get some, feedback on it. I'm gonna get, just 1 second. So, is other constituency groups here any comment?
I think it's very reasonable to expect the meeting to take it back, make sure everybody has a discussion about it. Because even when I'm sitting here listening to the portrayal of Francine on what this, and nothing to take away from ITAC at all, because I know they've been meeting and doing good work and all that. But last time I had an understanding of what participatory governance is, no committee should be making real decisions unless there's some path. So when you're explaining it, and I'm hearing it as this committee's meeting and they're making decisions, well then that just means it's okay. Everybody can have any committee they want and continue to meet and be making decisions. That's what was broken about participatory governance.
Exactly.
So we have another constituency group that says perhaps we should take it back and have a full discussion on it. Okay? Okay, so hold on to that thought. When we get to a couple more folks, Karen.
So I would like to use Robert's rule by making this a formal motion, that Francine has already made a formal motion, and then okay, and then I'm going to second it, right? And then if there is a desire to delay taking a vote on it until there's been more discussion, then a motion can be made to table it until time certain, right? And then we can make the motion to table it until time certain, and then we have something in the pipeline that shows what kind of action we're doing on this, and that it was brought forward, it's been tabled, then we have a definite date to bring it back before a vote.
This is very discussion. You're going to move on to more, and then we'll.
But basically, she's made a motion.
I made a motion.
I'm
to make a motion to table this until, I don't know, because I know you all are not around during the summer. You know,
On accreditation, that's my question.
I'd like to second that, that there could be a little bit more discussion before it gets tabled.
Yeah, let's hear from you.
Yes.
Okay, so we've got table, you wanna take it back to your constituency group? We've got discussion, let me get to Wendy, because she's been very patient. Yes, Wendy?
Well, I'm just reading the very first page of the, folder that Grace gave me, and it was there last week too, and so PBC values, purpose, and charge, and if you just look at it, it's like, you know, things have to be transparent, you know, there has to be a clear line of decision making, and, you know, PGC is supposed to review proposals that significantly impact the campus community, so we have these committees out there that aren't doing reporting to PGC, I mean, you know, pretty much everything here is being violated, so I just wanna throw that out there, and when we take these back to your constituencies, hopefully it will come back here and be resolved quickly.
Anyone else, did I miss anybody?
That was gonna just be my same comment, just, I'm all in favor of constituencies being able to speak and talk, and all of that, but I just wanted to have some of those comments made, that you could take that feedback back to your constituencies and say, here's the charge, PCC reviews proposals that would significantly impact the community, coordinates the development of policies and procedures, coordinates alignment between plans, and so it seems like it does fall exactly under what PCC is charged to do.
So, table, should we add a date? Table until, how much time do y'all want to think back and discuss, how much time?
Month.
30 days?
Excuse me, I'd like to say something. At this station. I know technology is so crucial for us, for students, smart classes and all that, and they have been working with the same application start and one of other work groups. And the work groups that Carol is doing, it was for a reason, because we really need technology, we are lacking of technology. And what we would have, from my perspective as teacher, I would like to have a discussion, to have the person in charge, I mean the chair or representative to come and give us information about what happened during these 2 years for us to, you know, to be informed and to know what we're gonna discuss with our constituent group.
He came last time. So noted, so with 30 days, they have, we've got a group here that proposed 30 days, with 30 days give you that time you need to have whoever it is to come and speak to the student body?
Yes.
Yes, 30 days be enough?
Yes.
30 days,
Well, partly, I'd like to ask for a point of information here, this 30 days is for the constituent groups to go and talk among themselves and decide whether these three committees should report to the PGC.
right, to have that conversation.
And that's the decision. Do we want these committees to be independent and going ahead with the business that they're doing without reporting here, or do we want them to be standing committees of the PGC? That's the
Yes,
question.
that's the discussion. Everybody's clear, I think. Mickey, please.
Yeah, so, one, the framing, I wouldn't necessarily use that framing. I agree that how decisions are made and worked through the PGC for it to make its recommendation is important. Whether every committee has, in that sense, has to report to the PGC to do that, I think is a question. So I think when the administrators get together, we would like to present a way to achieve the objective, which doesn't necessarily mean in every case every committee reports here. So that's just our rough discussion so far. 2, there's the other document on CCSF Engage, which we had a discussion at our administrative meeting, which we think is a fabulous document to finalize at this college so it's clear to everybody how things do operate. Because even administrators don't know how to get stuff done and through, where there has been input and engagement and dialogue. And we are planning to have a retreat of administrators on August 10th to deal with our view on this and be ready to come back and present on that here. So 30 days wouldn't be enough time because we just wouldn't be able to get that done until August.
Okay, so I've got one constituency group that needs more than, when is that next meeting in August? No, not the retreat, when would we meet again for PGC? When would be that first meeting in August for Sunday?
We don't have it yet. We only have them up to July 30th.
July 3rd, we don't have August meetings? What, okay,
What's the first and third
Give
Thursday?
me 1 second, I'm gonna come to you in 1 minute. So the last meeting in July, when is the next?
July 30th.
July 30th, and so the next 2 weeks would be
August 13th.
13? What's the next one? 27?
You can meet 20th.
All right, let's keep August 20th, I'm gonna write August 20th, and I'm gonna give the floor to Bushra, she had a comment, please.
I mean, the problem that we have been facing since for a long time is communication. There is so many things are happening at the college, and the students have no idea what's going on until it comes right to PGC. We don't know what it's about. So I would like to answer to that every constituent group should come and we have discussion before decisions are made. And that's what I believe, because decisions have been made without any consideration of our constituent group, there is so many things are happening and we don't know what it's about. And it just can't go here. I mean, we would like to have like participatory governance. Why we are here is to be part of the process. And accreditation were very, very clear that we need to do better job with communication, with having input from all constituent groups. And the only place, the committee that when this happened is PGC. And we have representatives from all the constituent groups. So I would like to see everything happening at the college because there is so many things like different work groups, different things, administrator, you have been doing so many work, everyone, academic senate, and I would like to see it coming here with discussion. We learn about what's going on, we learn before decisions are made. That's all what I want to say.
Thank you, Bushra. So I think that if we can agree on maybe August 20th, that might give everybody enough time and every constituency group, everyone will be back. Some won't still be here, so you'll be ahead of the game. So will that work with everybody August 20th? You guys, yes? Admin, students? August 20th?
Yes.
Lillian?
Could I recommend that in the meantime, we hear from ICAP at some point? That before August 20th, we invite ICAP to come and present some of the things that they've been doing. Because nothing in whether they're a standing committee or not prevents any committee from coming and just sharing what's been going on. So as the governance decisions go forward, that doesn't mean that
Yeah, do it.
that we have, right, so, it doesn't mean we can't do anything.
So
That everybody's silent now, right?
So we'll go ahead and invite ITAC, and then we'll give it until August 20th to put it back on the agenda, and then this way everybody's had enough conversation with every group. In the meantime, if you need additional resources and information, please reach out to the folks. Bushra, I know you said you were gonna invite, so reach out to the folks. Can everybody work with that one? Yes, okay, I don't think we need approval on that, I'll just bring it back and put it on the agenda for,
You are the chair.
In terms of following Robert's rules, can you note that a motion has already been made and tabled, so the same motion is being brought back.
ditto Karen, thank you.
And so that's just for the pre-existing.
Yes, that's for
The
me.
others, I think, could be agenda is as a separate, discussion.
What I'm gonna do now, who has to leave first?
Yeah.
But what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna mix it up a little bit, okay? So what I'm gonna do first is I'm gonna take you all the way down to miscellaneous report updates on item C, because we just need you to confirm and under the institutional effectiveness performance indicator that the reserve balance at our goal is 9%, because Pam did a great job last time. Can you confirm that?
Confirm.
Okay. Any questions for Ron on this confirmation of 9%?
No, the current fund balance is actually about 12, right? And there's one thing that I wanted to just make for the record is that the print screen, the page print, that's on, doesn't have the page, but in the minutes in this little book, the numbers in there are incorrect, and that's been acknowledged by the state chancellor's office. So the numbers that you actually see there that were presented last time, that were on the webpage, were incorrect. I've been told as of Wednesday that they've been updated or corrected, but I haven't verified it myself. So the point that I'm trying to express is that the numbers that you see there, the purpose of putting those goals in place remains the same, but the numbers as they populated them from the state chancellor's office are all incorrect. They should be updated or corrected, if not already.
Do you know what those are?
Yeah, I can actually. Off the top of my head, I don't, but I'll show you exactly where they are. Let's see. California Community College Chancellor's Office, divisions, finance, facilities, and then down here we go to accountability unit, and then down here district trends and analysis. And here's where I've shown this before, where the state chancellor's office puts together a 5-year analysis on every district for the general fund, and ours is right there. So here are the correct numbers, and I would say they're correct by using the actual figures, right? The actual numbers, not the budget, because they got our budget number wrong too. It's correct in that this number includes the general fund as well as parcel tax. As we've discussed and discuss more here in a minute, the parcel tax is accounted for, recorded separately than the general fund, because the state considers it a special revenue fund, which is kind of like a categorical program in itself. So really, this number in the general fund is 200.6 million less than 15.2 million that the parcel tax generates. So again, my point being, the actual numbers are correct, and the percentages down here are correct, which are very different from the ones on your page.
Say why we went from 9%, or the state recommended is 5%?
We have board, well, that's in Title V, the minimum threshold, right? But our board policy is a range between 5 and 9%. Right now we're at 12%, which includes a few contingency for reserves, board designated reserve, and 9th year reserve, and a few other things. So the rationale was we have a range. We're 12% in actuality, 9% within the spectrum of our range. It's the closest we're at. And again, it's a goal.
Any other questions or comments for Ron? None? This side?
I just wonder,
Yes, Sally.
go ahead.
Go ahead, because I'm still.
I mean, are we required to make that distinction, what the goal is? I mean, if we're only given a recommendation, I'm not understanding why we need to make a real clear line in the sand of that range, when it's still just a recommendation of the state chancellor's office. Is there a reason why we're setting a number now?
Well, the goals, as the state chancellor's office has them, there has to be a specific number. There has to be a specific number. Now, it's a goal. Now, if we maintain at 12% as opposed to 9%, there are really no consequences for not meeting that goal. it's setting a goal.
Any other questions at all?
Okay, my question, I'm looking at this, I'm seeing that what we had, these are all goals on fund balance?
No, these are actual. The question, the reason I brought this up, this isn't necessarily related to this document. Someone asked what the actual numbers are, and here are the actual numbers.
So then I look at this, and I look at, 11, 12, 13, 10, 11, all above 5%. And yet the first big map report that I think we were part of that team said that we, well, I'm a little confused, because it's like we're way over 5% or over it in every single year. So I'm back to confusion, how Big Mac came to that conclusion. And if you were on the first team, you might know more than I do, but I don't understand. How is it that we were in such trouble and needed a special trustee with extraordinary powers, et cetera, when we were, for financial reasons initially, and we're not seeing that here?
Well, there's a lot to that question. I think it goes beyond the institutional effectiveness performance indicators. But in short is, FICMAT was, in the state chancellor's office, was looking at the levels of deficit spending here for the 3 years. We deficit spent 8.7 million there, deficit spent 6,073,000 there, and it had a marginal deficit spending there. So it was looking at that 3-year trend. But also included in these numbers as well is, this includes the unrestricted general fund as well as certain departmental fund types, fund type 14, that really the college doesn't necessarily want to, if it had to, take those funds for other reasons for which the departments have set it aside. Which, if you were to subtract out those department funds, those 3 years of deficit spending would be even worse.
And was the deficit spending because the state owed us money and never paid yet, or did we use?
That's simply cash. That has nothing to, the deferrals have nothing to do with this. So this isn't a cash basis. The deferrals are cash IOUs. It doesn't, the deferrals have no impact on this.
I'm done.
So the figures for the salary and benefits at 90.5, 91.8, 93.4, are those also going to be adjusted?
Yes, they'll be adjusted to these numbers right here. So last year it was 90.3, year before that was 92, year before that was 89.3, and year before that was 91. So if you, and I can email it to you if you want to send me an email, say, hey, it's a spreadsheet, we easily email it to you.
Thank you.
Francine brought up the FICMAT report, and I think that, there's these numbers, but then there's other numbers that aren't on here, right? I think that in FICMAT, they talked about unfunded liability, they talked about a whole bunch of other, figures that aren't on this spreadsheet, is what my understanding. I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't know that
No, you're absolutely correct. I mean, we're kind of putting 3 different topics into one conversation. Again, the only reason I pulled this up, the answer, or the question was, what are the actual numbers that should be on this page? And just for the answering the question, here's where they are. The FICMAT conversation is much broader than just the institutional effectiveness performance indicators.
Any other comments, questions? Last questions? Very good, so, Ron?
Yes.
I'm gonna move you back to new business, F, 2015-16 tentative budget.
So hopefully everyone has a packet or a stapled packet of paper, tentative budget. If not, there are some at the back on the table. It's also available online. We just posted this afternoon. So if you were to go under South City College Administration, Finance Administration, Budget, tentative budget. Here we are, tentative budget. So in putting this together, really kind of drawing back upon our discussions that we've had since January of 2015, we're kind of at the tail end of the road of development of our tentative budget. You may recall we've talked really continuously about budget assumptions. We talked about the administrative procedure 8.01 on fiscal budget preparation and fiscal accountability. We talked about a budget calendar. Really, all of those documents, those guiding documents together, kind of have led us to this point in time. Kind of thinking upon the budget development calendar, which is a requirement of that administrative procedure. In January, we had a special trustee approve a budget calendar that specifically identified certain tasks and activities and who's accountable and responsible for making sure that they're completed. The biggest piece of that is really in January, based upon the January proposal, putting out initial budget assumptions from which we're going to have or have had a very constructive, wide-based dialogue on what our budget looks like next year and the parameters from that. And then leading into really February, I believe it's February 9th through about the middle of April, departments had the ability really to go through Web 4, which is a recent development, to go through Web 4 and reallocate their budgets, request augmentations, and do a whole number of things really in Web 4 electronically to redistribute their budget or to make augmentation requests. And we did during the training, if they're going to make augmentation requests, it ought to align with what they're putting into program review. So, that was a critical piece this year because it creates the tangible evidence and linkage between our program review process and the budget development process. There you go. So here we are, May 21st, kind of reviewing right now an initial draft of the tentative budget. We're still making some tweaks, not necessarily to the numbers, because the numbers are as the department submitted them to us during that window of time, with the exception of the augmentation request. I'll talk about that in a little moment. The next step after here is as an information item on the board meeting on the 28th, and it's in the Finance Administration Board report for the board to review. After that, it's then on the calendar going to the June board meeting. The exact date escapes me at the moment, but really for review and approval at that meeting. So kind of jumping into it, it's a little different format than has been seen customarily. We've tried to put this in a format that is hopefully a little bit more user-friendly and more intuitive, and also follows the state's budget and accounting manual, lovingly known as the BAM, that really is the format that the prescribed format for us really for maintaining, upkeeping, reporting our financial information. Looking at it and kind of scrolling through it, let's talk about the May revise, because there was some, looking at page 4 of the document. A week ago today, actually, the governor released his May revise, and again, this is an update to his January proposal. It's very positive. Actually, it's probably one of the best budgets for community colleges that we've seen in quite some time. Actually, probably a few decades. The mixed message or the cautionary tale in it is that most of the money is one-time money, not necessarily ongoing. And so through this document, I've tried to, number one, highlight the major provisions of the governor's budget and how they'll impact us or affect us and what programs, but also put in bold whether or not this money is ongoing or one-time in nature, so that we have an understanding of, okay, is this added permanently to our ongoing base revenue, base budget, or is this kind of a one-time windfall and we'll see what happens next year during budget development? That being said, at a state level, state revenues have come in about $3.3 billion more than what the governor had projected or budgeted. So, we will see what happens. The first piece of it is growth. Around the state, growth, he's proposing to bump growth up from 2% to 3%. That doesn't necessarily apply to us because of stability funding, where we're at. The next piece of this is the cost of living. Cost of living was 1.58%. And again, I'm looking at page 5 now. Cost of living was at 1.58%. And cost of living is a very, very formulaic number that is calculated by the Department of Finance. Because of economic conditions, the cost of living, so the COLA, has been revised downwards from 1.58%, that was included in the January budget proposal, down to 1.02% in the governor's May revise. So that does have impacts upon our budget assumptions, and there's a downward revision. For us, dollar value wise, that's about $600,000 reduction in revenue compared to what we were looking at in January. And then, in addition to that, he's putting, or proposing to put $41.9 million system-wide, 72 districts, on the table to allow for stability and restoration funds for districts still trying to restore FTES because of the workload reductions in the past. Ongoing increased expenses, he's actually proposing to roll out $266.7 million. Compared to what he proposed in January of $125 million, so it's an increase of $141 million. Increase in base allocation funding, and it's targeted for operational increases that districts are going to encounter related to the STRS employer contribution increases, OPEB facilities issues or facility funding needs, and things of that nature. And professional development, for example, is one of them as well. Also, part of that is, well, next below that is there's a provision in his budget for increasing number of full-time faculty across the state. So he's putting $75 million on the table with the spirit and intent of creating 600 new full-time faculty jobs throughout the state of California. And that money is being allocated on an FTES manner, and it's actually fairly complex on really the expectation on use of those funds. So based upon our FTES number, we're projecting to get somewhere around a little in excess of $1 million. What that translates into full-time faculty, we don't necessarily know yet. We're still trying to calculate it based upon these bullet points right here. But it goes back ultimately what our faculty obligation number was and what we calculated it to be last fall. Now the FON is a 75-25, and it's again kind of like COLA, a very formulaic process. But we're not at this point in time exactly sure what that number means or looks like for us. But we're in the process of calculating it now. Again, we just got this information within the last week. Basic Skills and Student Outcomes Transformation Program. This is one-time restricted money. It's an increase of $60 million to Prop 98 funds, general funds essentially, but he's restricting it to accelerate the creation of evidence-based models of placement, remediation, student support, and helping for ed programs, ed planning. Basic Skills Partnership increased $2 million for providing incentives to community colleges and Cal State universities to coordinate the effort to provide instruction to basic skills to incoming California university students. I'm just going to kind of skip around here to the higher dollar amounts. Institutional effectiveness, I'll talk about this one. It's $15 million. This is ongoing money, but it's restricted, and it's really restricted to the state chancellor's office. This is directly funding these things, these initiatives, these targets, these strategies, these goals that we talked about a little earlier, but also also funding an institutional effectiveness office in Sacramento that helps engage and helps put together teams to come out and help districts with whatever issues they may be having. We have one coming to visit us, so we're actually benefiting from this $15 million. Deferred maintenance, instructional equipment money, an increase of $148 million over what he put in the table in January, really for scheduled maintenance and instructional equipment. So for example, in the current year, we've received about $3.4 million, and really the focus or target of that money has been to modernize, renovate classrooms, but also part of that renovation is to insert in them instructional technology, i.e. smart classrooms. Mandate, oh, this is a good one. Categorical programs, cost of living adjustment. The last couple of years that the general fund has gotten COLA, categorical programs have not benefited in kind. They haven't gotten a COLA. So what he's doing here is recognizing that, putting out a money for a COLA for identified categorical programs, namely DSPS, EOPS, and CalWorks. And that's pretty much a highlight. The other components of the major revise are in there for your review, but those are the major provisions that really you're going to see benefiting us, and that are built into the tentative budget to the extent we could, as quickly as we could in the last 5-7 days, and moving forward. And then going below, beginning on page 9, there's a section in there of description of funds. And I don't necessarily, this is something that I wanted everyone to fully appreciate from the accounting perspective, to the extent I know you will. We have an inordinate amount of fund numbers. And what that means is a fund is a revenue derived from a specific source that has to be accounted for, budgeted for, and reported for separately. We do it quite uniquely compared to our colleagues around the state, which is not necessarily a good or bad thing, but we do it uniquely, and the way we do it puts a little bit more workload into the way we do things within the district business office. But what I wanted to do is to insert this section called a description of funds so that everybody or the reader, whoever it may be, community member, student, faculty, staff, can really better understand when we say restricted general fund or general fund, unrestricted general fund, or special revenue fund, really what we're talking about and how the state is viewing these funds and the requirements and the accountability associated with these funds. We've also put in there a piece or a segment, and this is critically important, on how this budget was developed. Really a look or a snapshot on enrollment, what it's looking at right now. Now, we're in stability funding, but this still impacts us as well. So on page, so we don't break Lonnie's neck, on page 10 is a 14-year history of our FTS and our enrollment trends. These are actual numbers. Well, we've discussed this before, is that right now our base funding is under SB 860, 32,621 FTEs. Under stability funding, it basically puts a funding floor in place. We're funded at the greater of actual enrollments or a 5% drop off for next year with base revenue, base funding. So being that enrollment is down and we're not going to get to within that 5% drop down, this budget accounts for or assumes that we're going to have that 5% step down with some other provisions like the increase in the hands that are going to mitigate or offset that. But the question becomes, in terms of development of schedule and development of the budget itself, the unrestricted general fund, is that we've built this budget with a target FTES goal, and we've discussed this in a few different forms in the past, of 30,990 FTES. And it's broken out here between summer targets, fall targets, and spring targets. And those targets here, it says SU summer 15 target. So our target for this summer, they're coming up, is 2,180 rounding, 87 FTES. Of that, 1,747.69 is credit, 439 is non-credit. And I'll spare you on the fall and the spring, but it follows form. So that when we start engaging and talking about enrollments, you have some basis of comparing it to, well, what is our target goal? Where are we at? How are we doing? So that there's a broader understanding on really the implications, or what could potentially be implications as we go down the line. And given the time, I'm now going to kind of jump into really the assumptions. We've included the assumptions on page 12 and page 13.
Yeah. On the targets for the FDSs that we had,
Yes.
Are those based on what, the 95% or on
Yes.
not?
95, the 5% with the 5% step down.
Okay. On that piece right there.
Yes. Well, I wouldn't say peak. Yeah, but I think we're talking the same one. Trustee Lees.
Just so there's no misunderstanding on the line below your chart, the second large number you have on there is a typo. I think you meant 32,926.
No. 30. Yeah. This represents a fund reduction of 1,937 compared to the funded base. It should be 32,621 for the fiscal year. So thank you.
32,621.
That should be 32,621 because that's the funded base in the current year.
So it's not following.
Thank you.
That's great. No question.
I see here this item, and, you know, at Asian campus, they're having so many problems with childcare. I know the childcare was funded by AS Ocean campus, but they don't have enough funds to continue. So why child development fund doesn't cover that? Because we need childcare for
Yes.
students that are here, and they need childcare. It's so important. Why it's not covered completely from this fund?
Because we don't generate enough revenue from the state revenues and the federal revenues in the child care program to fully cover the cost of that program. And so what ends up happening is that the unrestricted general fund has to come in and support or augment that funding source to support their operations.
So when you say unrestricted fund, what do you talk about? Is it, I mean, the AS fund is from student activities fund, so
Right.
it shouldn't come from
It's
their
not
account.
coming from associated students.
But it does, they do cover for me about the childcare.
Well, they may in terms of parent costs, but there is a sizable portion or a sizable amount in the unrestricted general fund that supports the general operations of the child development program, both the academic piece of it that generates FTES that derives state funding, but also the programs that really are supported by 3 grants, 2 of them from the California Department of Education and 1 of them is a federal food program. So, you know, there's multiple sources of revenue that support the Child Development Center, the largest being the grants that are listed here in the Child Development Fund, but also in the unrestricted general fund. I'm not exactly familiar with what the Associated Students is contributing, and to be honest with you, I'd have to sit down and talk to Rebecca to figure it out.
Yeah, they're putting so much money in this child development center, and it's put them in a lot of, hardship, and they are really suffering from that. So they're paying for many students to be able to take care of the kids. And there is so many problems that we know that if you will see, and maybe at one of the executive council we discussion
Yeah,
about that?
I'd welcome your invitation to the Associated Students. Okay. Chancellor?
Ron, you probably need to explain that your assumptions are based on a productivity of 17.2 versus what we are actually experiencing, and what that means if it continues.
Okay, so embedded within these numbers, so going into some detail here, the targets, for example, for summer is 2,187 FTES. To generate that, and to build a schedule of classes to get there, the estimate is, on the part of academic affairs, that we're going to need approximately 119 full-time equivalent faculty. And the question, or the comment noted by the chancellor is that embedded in that is there's a certain ratio of FTES per FTEF, certain ratio of students to faculty that we need to get to really reach this target. And so in terms of budget and working with the Academic Affairs Office, we've allocated within the Academic Affairs budget enough to support for a summer term 119 full-time equivalent faculty. So the budget is there. Now, kind of the risks, the inherent risks in that I think the chancellor's alluding to, is that if we have fewer students in the same number of faculty, they call it a productivity ratio. We can call it whatever you want, but ultimately it's a ratio trying to meld together how we derive our funding from the state, FTES, with our major component in our schedule, which is FTEF, the cost side of it, and trying to meld them together. So embedded in there is a target rate, really productivity rate of 17.2. So the major takeaways from that is if we have a greater number than that, 17.2, we serve more students, we are over our FTES target, and we actually have surplus relative to that term in terms of the scheduled classes. Now, if the opposite is true, we have a ratio that is below 17.2. Not only have we not met our FTES target, but we've spent more money than what really we projected or anticipated, and we're going to have to figure out what we're going to do for fall and spring as not to overspend the budget or deficit spend the budget within those areas. So it's a balance. It's a dance. Is that exactly where you wanted to go?
Where are we now?
Okay. Right now we're at about 12.08.
For summer?
No, for spring. For spring. For summer right now we're at about 13.5. Right now. And excuse me, I should qualify that. 13.5 for the credit side. The non-credit side has a different rate. They're not 17.2, it's 21.5. And you know, our non-credit programs actually get to the target. You know, our credits where right now we're having some difficulty.
So what I'm hearing just on this point is that you put in here as an assumption a number that doesn't match our recent experience in terms of the productivity ratio, right? Is this a number that you've been adjusting downwards to try and bring it more in line with our actual experience, or because I recognize this from previous years where I would see a budget that I knew we weren't going to hit those numbers, and yet that's what was in the budget.
That's an interesting question. So the short answer is it's based upon experience, but it's based upon also the stability funding, the additional funding that we're getting from the state despite the lower enrollment. So it's really a combination of those two factors. What the number that you currently see in there and the 1120 account code, which I'll talk about in a minute, given we're on the topic, but also the adjunct or the part-time faculty, which is the account code 1322 within the budget.
Just for future,
Yep.
it would be really helpful if that productivity number was in this chart or referenced in the footnotes so that those of us looking at it could get a better sense
How about if we put it in the budget assumption document itself, in terms of the revenue assumptions? Because that ultimately is what it directly ties to. Sound good?
That number would, I'm sorry.
I've done the same thing, didn't get caught earlier. At some point during this presentation, will you talk about the consistency in budget reporting as far as, how much wiggle room is there in the budget reporting? How much is just directly formulated from the state? And I'm interested in being able to compare those reported out numbers from the chancellor's office across colleges.
When you say report out number, are you talking about FTES numbers?
Any of the numbers, the 90.5 is adjusted, just how consistent is all college budgeting across the state? Is it all regulated, or there's just like a lot of playroom? You guys, be stashing money in bonds and
I went astray then. The short answer is it depends upon the individual district, really. It depends upon their budgeting practices, it depends upon their policies, procedures, and really their culture. Combination of all. So there is some rigidity in terms of structure and how it's recorded, but there's a lot of latitude at a district level in terms of how the pie is cut. I'll put it that way. So, unless there's any other hands, it's going to go to the unrestricted general fund since we're on the topic. So we briefly looked at the main assumptions behind it in terms of the FTES goals, the related FTEF goals. We talked about the May revise, and I covered that, so I'm not going to belabor the assumptions. We've covered this quite a bit. We do have to, for full disclosure, again, this is kind of a working draft. There's a few assumptions that we're going to have to update within the assumptions webpage, or on the assumptions page, like for example the COLA. Because of the timing of when the May revise was released, we haven't had a chance to cost out everything. And we're in the process of doing right now. So this document is, as the bottom right here, draft working document as of May 1st. As of the time that the agenda item the agenda is posted for the board meeting, given that this is an information report, it'll be updated. So I strongly encourage you to revisit this document often. It is great reading. So we included the actual, our governance documents in here, the board policy, the administrative procedure, and then getting into the actual numbers. So the way this is formatted with all of our funds is we start with our operating fund, our main operating fund, which this is a summary of what is to follow, which is a lengthy document. So those that just want to say, give me the executive summary, here it is right here, unrestricted general fund summary, 15-16 tentative budget. Right now, in the tentative budget, we're expecting about $200,077,033 and some change, some pennies. We rounded it off. It's comprised largely of $103 million approximately of local revenue and 97 of state revenue. The reason why you see state revenue kind of going down compared to the current year is because property taxes are going up. Property taxes going up, the state pays us less because it's basically a zero-sum game for us. We have total computational revenue, the adjusters, the three main components of that change. Property taxes or student enrollment fees go up, state general apportionment, state revenues go down. So that's really the primary reason why you see that change right there. And then looking how we're spending the money, revenues up here, how we're budgeting to spend that money, largely based upon the FTEF targets and goals. Academic salaries of $88.7 million, classified salaries 37.9, almost 38 million. Benefits of 47 million, supplies, materials 1.7, other operating expenses 18.3, equipment of 2.3 million, transfers and reserves of 3.9. So we have a balanced tentative budget. And then kind of rolling into, well, you want to see more detail of exactly what those numbers represent or what they're comprised of. We put a little nice colorful chart in here to just break out the percentages, but here's the details. So state general apportionment, prior year corrections, and this is a level of detail that really wasn't there in the past. This is how we were required to report to the state, so why not put it in our budget book? It's for full transparency and review. So here's where the state revenues, just state general apportionment, again, is the largest piece, 68.3 million. We're getting, or projecting to get 23.6 million in Prop 30 state education protection account EPA money, which was a part of the Prop 30. So those are the two major components of state revenue, and then the local revenue here, the largest components of that is property taxes, which is kind of broken out into a few areas. We have 22.6 million in property taxes, and then ERAF, Education Revenue Augmentation Fund, which was basically, it's another form of property taxes, or a different version of property taxes, but very much associated. We're projected to get 30.9 million. For the property taxes, those numbers are coming directly from our county treasurer controller's office, the tax assessor collector's office as well. And so we're pulling these numbers directly from them and what they're giving us in terms of what they're seeing in terms of tax receipts. Enrollment fees, we're looking at approximately 8.6, almost 8.7 million. And the non-resident, we're looking at 8.5 million. And that's actually as of really more based upon current year activity, what we're seeing. Sales tax, 15.1 million. We're actually seeing right now, that's based upon current year, right now we're looking at getting about 15.1, 15.2 million in sales tax. The reason for that is because it's based upon an ADA FTES split between us and the Unified School District. The ADA is stable, our FTES is down, so our proportionate share of the sales tax is going down compared to what it was when enrollments were higher. So that's the reason why you see that reduction. So that's the revenue side, the highlights or lowlights, depending how you look at it. And then we get into the different classifications. Full-time contract faculty, 1120. These are roughly the 550 FTEF that we have in terms of full-time contract faculty. That's a rounding number, so don't necessarily quote me on that one. And then we have in here the administrators. We have instructional, full-time instructional faculty. Basically, that's for hours really outside of the classroom, like reassign time and whatnot. We have counselors, librarians, and then we have more release time, more for hourlies. And here's where our adjunct or part-time faculty budgets primarily reside. The regular, the pay-by-load, we're trying to go to more of a pay-by-load basis in light of FLAC. You may have heard about that. And those are really the two main largest areas of expenditures within the academic salaries. Within the 2000s are classified. You see kind of a history here. The budget, tentative budget right now is 32.8 million in classified. It's been relatively constant or stable from 2014-15 to 15-16, and up from what it was in 10-11 and 11-12, or excuse me, 12-13 is right here. Just kind of scrolling through, and then we get into the benefits. So one thing to note too, and this, I think I'll kind of close it on this and answer any questions you may have, is that looking at the column for the working budget, in the 3,000 benefits, we just fully implemented position control in January 2014. I wanted to leave this in here because it gave a glimpse on how we actually budgeted in the past. Because how we budgeted in the past is that we didn't track individuals in positions in dollar amounts for those specific positions. It was more of a pool of dollars, and you had a whole bunch of positions that really were expended. And here's an example of that. Here's an example of that when you look at the 3,000 benefits for how they were budgeted at the beginning of this fiscal year. for 14-15, is that there wasn't the level of detail in terms of splitting out budgets for at the position level, but also at the benefit level. They were pretty much all in groups or lump sums where you see the actuals. You know, we spent on OASDI, which is like Social Security. You know, we actually had it broken out between Social Security for Board of Trustees, certificated students, administrators, but we didn't budget for it. We budgeted for it in lump sum in like holding accounts. Well, we're not doing that anymore, as you can see here. In the tentative budget, we've broken it out to the individual detail and individual account, which provides for a number of things: greater clarity, greater budget planning purposes, and greater tracking to make sure that we're not going to suspend our budget, as we had done in those 3 previous years, that when we were looking at that 5-year sheet from the state chancellor's office. So that's kind of some of the overviews of the unrestricted general fund, the May revise, the process that has led us up to this point in time. Really, the last 6 months, it's been memorable. I love it. I hope you think fondly upon it as well. So, is there any questions? In the interest of time, it's 5:25, and I know I've gone over my time.
Yes, and Governor's leaving in 5 minutes, so when we get to her, Karen?
If I saw it's under new business,
Well, we're in the process right now trying to set up challenges, because everything that's going on, everyone is it's very busy. You know. We're trying to do another public forum or a campus forum on this, so that we can, kind of like what we did last May, go into some depth.
I'll let you skip, by the way, we don't have time. The reason I'm asking that is, my understanding is that the PTC is supposed to review the budget, right? This is great, but since it was only put in my hands when I got here, I have not had the time to spend loving time with it as I would like to. So I don't really feel like that this is an introduction to it. If you're going to go to the board and say, oh yes, the PGC reviewed it, we would need more time than that. And I don't remember now where it stands in terms of what's in our plan as to whether we are supposed to review it or just, waiting in front of us is enough. It is more than just waiting in front of us, but it's not really a full review of it. And since we're out of time for questions, I don't even feel like I should go into my other questions about it. So
Well,
I'll just leave it there.
I suggest.
If you want to wait, Ron, can we wait a little longer?
Wait for what?
I want to make sure I get Gopar, because she has to leave. You're okay? Okay, so let's continue.
Well, I think to
I'd like Karen to ask a question. If she has a question, and Gopar can wait. What was your other question, Karen? Hold on one second. Karen, what was your other question you were going to ask?
I was going to, a year ago, a piece of the budget was the planning model for 8-year plan.
Right.
I don't see that in here. It was very important to have it a year ago.
It's still very important. Well, we're updating that as well, based upon the May revise.
Oh, so is that something that's going to be presented to the board? Is that going to come here first?
It'll be included in the final adopted budget, but right now it's probably not going to be in its full form included in the tentative budget.
I noticed we're about 10% difference from what was projected for 2015-16 a year ago, and what we have now is about $10 million
Difference.
So 5% difference.
Right.
In what we got. So
Greater,
I
right?
feel like, projecting out 8 years has got limited value. But at any rate,
Well,
I do appreciate
in
the
the-
detail that you've given us here, and I will spend some time with it, and I'd like to be able to have an opportunity to ask about it after I've looked at it, and I hope this is not, I'm supposed to approve it or recommend it without having that opportunity.
Absolutely not. And I always appreciate your emails.
I do.
But I'd also encourage you to once the schedules align, to go to the budget forum, which I know you will, and encourage as many folks to do that as well. And if, it'd be the pleasure of the PGC, the board isn't being asked to take any action on this until, I think it's the 26th of June? The 26th June? 25th? Okay, so there is time. Definitely there's time, and the campus forum, public forum is is gonna be hopefully a great avenue or an ability to ask those in-depth questions.
Okay, yes, Chance.
And Karen, we will bring it back to the next couple of PGCs prior to the board's approval of the final budget. So there should be, well, you've got roughly a month to review it. And it will change, as Ron said, you're gonna have to, as he updates it, we will continue to bring that back, those updates, to the PGC prior to the board's approval.
Any other questions for Ron?
Just information about, for students, especially centers, other campuses. I would like to know about the forum ahead of time,
Yes, absolutely.
dates, and we can participate too, whoever is listening.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So we've lost our clerk, so we can continue on with items on an informational basis without making any decisions unless there's any alternates in the audience. Anyone wants to? But I don't see any. I don't see any.
I wanted to point out that Dean and Abner was here for the last 2 hours on new business items A, B, C, and D, which actually are informational only, as opposed to us voting on them on 6.2. These are instructional, rely primarily for policies and administrative procedures. And if Lucha has 5 minutes, we can get some student feedback on it. Or Lucha, you can say you don't want to be the sole student providing feedback and we can accommodations for you.
I can stay 5 minutes, but I would like to have more students to give more feedback.
I'm gonna go ahead and move on to Gohar now. Gohar, you are, I see the presentation, please.
And it is information.
Thank you, Deanna, very much for being here for the last 2 hours and coming back again with such good graces.
It's fine.
Sometimes it happens. I apologize.
So it is informational item, what I wanted to share with you. Many of you are on accreditation work groups, and what you're doing here is accreditation work. So the conversation that you had on the Participatory Governance Council and your operations and evaluations, that's all accreditation work. The work that Ron is presenting is accreditation work, so it's all good. The committees, faculty and staff, a couple students as well. We hope to get more students, especially during next fall and spring when it's gonna be really hectic and busy and we're getting into gear. We are in gear, essentially, to have more participation as well. So all of the work groups have been working really hard. They've developed action plans. All of those action plans are on our website. They're live, they're being continuously improved upon and refined. There are some committees are meeting more actively than other committees, but there are committees and they are meeting. And what we've done is I've sent an email to all of the constituent groups and union leadership as well. So we're soliciting feedback, and from the students as well. We would want feedback from the students. We'll be taking our action plans to the board. I'll be doing a short presentation on the action plans to the board this month, and then again in June, to let them know about all the work that's being done. I don't know if you want me to go through each one of these are presentations in and of themselves. We held a forum 2 weeks ago on Friday where each of the co-chairs came and they gave really great presentations and highlighted the important work that was being done in each of the areas. And we solicited feedback from the audience members. How does this affect you? How does this impact you? And we got that feedback. So that was really great. So if you could at least take the time to look at them, talk about them with your colleagues. We need people to say, I don't think this is good enough. Maybe you're not moving fast enough. What about this? What about that? This is what the standard says. The more feedback that we get from people, and the earlier on, the better, so that we can be certain that we're doing everything humanly possible and that we're meeting the accreditation standards. And again, you know, when the team came out here last time, they found 32 areas, and when you look at the 32 areas, a lot of them are repetitive or this, you know, similar, so I think of it as a little bit less. Some major accomplishments have already taken place, and that's great, and there's a lot of work to be done. My biggest concern, again, like this Participatory Governance Council, the work that you're doing, that you come to, you know, you do the data analysis, you collect the information, you get your feedback from your constituencies, but come fall, we've got to be implementing changes so that we can check in the spring, like, hey, are we doing a better job? Did this make a difference? And if it didn't make a difference, that's okay. What are we going to do next to make, it's that continuous process of improvement. But we've got to experiment, we've got to make some changes. They are happening in the student services, in the equity. Lillian, please.
Well,
I mean, you add.
I have to add, but I also want to note that it's 5:35 and some of us need to go to lavender graduation. And so, but I do want to put out to this body that while the Senate did recommend the action items that the Senate put forth, we're asking that in standard 4A, that it's noted that we actually don't have full participation. We have nothing from the students, we have nothing from classified, and we haven't actually had a discussion in here. Standard 4A is about our governance. I mean, it's a lot about PGC, and we're still having trouble making sure that it's on the agenda as an action item to discuss. It should probably have a recommendation from PGC that this is what we discussed we were going to do. There have been some attempts to try, you know, we have the 15th was a due date for having reviewed the action items. I'm not sure if there was follow-up with all of the different constituents. I know that the meeting between the academic senate and the students got canceled because of finals and getting ready for finals, which wasn't necessarily thought of when we were making that date. And so at this point, the Senate is asking that standard 4A action items not be recommended to the board because they are incomplete. They have not had the kind of dialogue from this committee that they need to have. This standard is about us.
Actually, for point of clarification, we did have discussion. We opened it up for 3 times to have all these constituency groups email any type of action plan or recommendations. Grace, did we get any aside from the academic senate?
From NISA, some of,
Lisa,
yeah.
did you get something from the group? So what we sent out the last time was actually what we received.
I'm just scrolling through,
Yeah.
looking at what the action plans
So
are.
the last time I asked for folks to give me feedback, for those that were here, it was for May 13th.
It got moved to May 15th in order to accommodate students on the 15th.
Right, we even did that to make sure we got input, and there was, I
But
don't
that
think
doesn't
there was.
constitute giving input. Making due dates and saying nobody turned anything in is not actually having conversations at PGC about what is supposed to be happening here, about actually talking about the action items that we're supposed to improve on. There's a different qualitative thing that needs to happen here, and so the Senate is asking that 4A be acknowledged as incomplete.
Yes, this is exactly what I have been repeating and repeating again. Any, like, standard 4A, when we meet as executive council where there is a representative from all across the districts, and we would love to see in our meeting, like, when there is information, when there is things that we need to do, feedback and input, that the constituent group come to our executive meeting and let us know what is going on, what's happening, and that is a big loss, that we are not informed, we are not, there is many things happening that is really hard, because just items, but then we need to stay informed, you know, about what's going on, what's happening when there is many items that come and we don't know what it's about. So there is, do you understand me or not?
Well, I guess maybe your comment in terms of, I don't know if you're making any comment in terms of this, because this is Google Doc, it's online, open to anyone to review and make comments, and people have made comments about, you know, say this is a standard 4. I mean, I happen to be the chair of standard 4, A, and, you know, people have, I mean, the academic senate has definitely weighed in and made some really good suggestions that we've incorporated, that is incorporated in this Google Doc. So I guess I'm not quite following, you know, I mean, because it's open to anybody to look at this, even the students. I mean, everybody can look at this and look at what we sort of worked through so far as far as the action plan and, you know, make some comments.
Okay, I'll give you an example. I am talking this is as a whole, For example, the chart that we got last time, not last meeting, before about the chart about the governance. Yes, about the college. We had, the students were good, they didn't understand anything about that, and nobody came to us and explained what it's about, how it's, so that is a problem, it's a big frustration. I'm not talking now about only this, I'm talking about the whole. There is, things have to change.
One second on the CCS second page. Lillian actually, last meeting, did offer to go out to the student body. We have 4 student representatives. And the reason we sort of tabled or held on to the item was so everybody could go out and talk amongst their constituency groups. And Lillian, I think it was you, offered and said to the students, well, it's anybody really, we will go out and we will talk and explain it and.
We were set for Friday at 2 o'clock, but it was prep for finals, it was that wasn't the best time to do it. I understood that, and the students canceled. And so what our point, we're matching your point, before this is recommended, we need to get your feedback. And we also need to know, right, that when I looked through here, I didn't see changes made by Lisa, so I didn't see classified changes in there. So our point is that we haven't seen the changes from classified and the changes from the students. We haven't received the full input from all of the constituents. So before we recommend it, we actually want some of that to happen. And we would also like some of the conversation at QGC to switch from when is it due to what's in it.
Yes, what's in it. And I understand
Do you have the time?
Now, I was here in 2012, 2013, and in 2012, there was no this and that. And frankly, I will say that at the very top, there was some leadership, and I'm not here anymore, that didn't seem to have an actual desire for us to make it, right? There was lip service paid for, oh yes, we're gonna do these things, but there were actually things that could have been done that really weren't done. And sure enough, in 2013, we were told, no, your participatory governance is not functional enough. It was very heartbreaking for those of us who were trying to. The PGC has administrative leadership, right? It is chaired by yourself. It is set up that the PGC is chaired by an administrator. This puts an extra burden on administration to see that it actually is functioning the way it's supposed to function. I believe that you are sincere, right? I see a contrast between where we are now and where we were in 2012, in that I don't think there was a sincere desire to actually have participatory governance functioning. I see a sincere desire here, but it's not getting there. It's just not getting there. So we can have some conversations about what else can be done. One of the things that was done before, but not done sincerely, was let's get people from other colleges to come and talk to us about how they do it, right? I'm not suggesting that we should stop everything and wait for somebody else to come in and give us advice, but maybe getting advice from some other folks would help.
Well, I just want to, at our standard form meeting, one of the things we talked about, and we divided it up among the folks who were in attendance, is how other colleges are looking at standard 4A, okay? So that is happening. And so I take a little bit of exception to that we're not going to make it and we're not seriously moving forward with this, because the people who were present, we are looking at how other colleges are doing it and seeing how we can improve upon this. You know, I am a member of this body and I'm the chair of standard 4A, and I'm not going to let that fail. You know, we've already come up with an action plan. It's not perfect. It needs some work. We love more input. But I personally don't take that point of view that it's not going to happen.
I'm not saying it can't. I'm just saying at the rate. I mean, look at today's meeting. We had a number of items on the agenda that had to do with meeting accreditation standards. We really only discussed of those items. We only hit one of them, which was the standing committees, and that was resolved.
Because not everybody had a chance to weigh in on it.
I understand, but I'm just saying.
Everyone should.
I'm just saying. So that's the rate of progress, right? I'm not looking to make people feel bad. I'm looking to see what is it that can be done so that we can be sure that we're going to succeed in making it in 2016. How can we be sure? Because I don't. I just gave one suggestion. I'm not the one who's in charge of this, and if I were in charge of it, yes, I would have suggestions. We had one session on Robert's rules, but it is difficult to run a meeting of this sort in a manner that actually gets through the agenda within the allotted time. We aren't succeeding in doing that, and that's a problem. My suggestion would be to look at some other things and to run the meetings in a different way. We could get, a professional facilitator to run the meetings for us, if necessary, to figure out a way to get through our agendas in time and still allow for people to talk. I mean, you're asking me, so I'm telling you, here are some ideas. I'm not saying these are the best ideas, but my feeling is if what we're doing isn't working, let's try some other things, right? Let's do some. This is how I manage things in my own life. If I can't figure something out, I try something, and then if it doesn't work, I try something else, right? But I feel as if we're not making changes in how we're approaching this, and you know, the issues that Bouchard has raised, where there isn't enough of the background so that things can be understood. We're not doing a good job in our meetings of distinguishing between things that we're supposed to be acting on and things that are brought to us for our information. And it's nice to have the things that are brought to us for our information, but the things that we need to act on should be the things that get the priority of time so that we can act on them. Right? I mean, you know, I just heard Gohar say, if you think things aren't moving, speak up, right? So that's why I'm speaking up. I think things aren't moving, or aren't moving at the pace, because the time we have is so short, right? So I spoke up.
Yes, with all due respect, I think the things are not moving. It's because you guys, the faculty, doesn't agree with all what the classified and the administrators are saying. It's my personal opinion, but I think if you are willing to work with the administrators, especially the members of this PGC Council, we can come up with a solution. I listened to the recording 3 times. That's why I love my job. I have to memorize all the discussion and listen to all the debates 3 times. And I have to tell you, with all due respect to what you feel, I think you guys monopolize the conversation. Sorry.
Can I ask you what it is we're doing that isn't working with the administration, and what we could do differently that to you would look like working with the administration? Because I really, you know, I do want to work with the administration. I think I am. Clearly, I'm not getting this. What does it mean?
Are you responding or?
I think you should bring it back to the group.
Yeah, let's continue on with the meeting, if that's okay.
I am going to disagree wholeheartedly. I do know what's happening in the background with the support for the agendas, and I want to say that the Academic Senate is doing everything it can to try to make this happen, even more than the Academic Senate really should be having to do, in part in recognition because the college needs to have so much done. We have so many people here that are new. We haven't had time for the conversations that we need to have. And I think that I'm going to agree with Karen. I think there's a completely sincere effort to make this happen, but now is the time to call out the fact that it's not happening. And the difference for me qualitatively is there's a difference between saying due date, due date, due date, and actually having the conversation. We need to talk about the roles and responsibilities of people here so that we do get information about the classified input, so that we do get information about the student input. I think it's a fair call to say, how can we possibly go forward on 4A, on PGC, and only have really half the constituents having put input in, and one of the constituent groups having gone totally above and beyond on trying to make that input happen. I think that's a very fair thing to say. And, you know, if we could sit down and agree on what's informational and what's not informational, and, you know, take a moment to not go forward on stuff and figure it out and move it, I'm not saying that very well, but we wouldn't have to have so many disputes here if, and I hear you guys, right? In August, you're going to sit down. Thank you. I just want to say thank you for that. Because I know what I put into CCSF Engage. I'm so glad to have you guys sit down and look at it. But I'm going to agree. We need a little bit of a sea shift from let's check the boxes of the process to let's get into the content of what we're doing.
Thank you, Lillian. Gohar, did you have any other comments? Very good. So let's move on to the next item.
So, and I'm sorry, it starts in 5 minutes.
Okay.
So,
Have a nice
and I invite everyone here to get up and go to Diego Rivera and cheer on our LGBT students. They have done incredible and wonderful things. So thanks.
Okay, very good, I'm gonna continue on.
I really, really sincerely would like to know what it is that I could do different that would be, okay, some other time. Please talk to me about it.
I just want to make, I think that, you know, working together on the CCSF engage.
I'm sorry, I have to go now. Bye.
Improvement is because all the constituents are, there's things going out in the senates and groups, and we need to be clearer and better, and more efficient, so that we can get, particularly, I mean, the accreditation item is just one example, but it's a good example because it's urgent, it's essential, and we need to all be on the same page with it. And so I think they're all, you know, that's an example of those two items. We're not in sync. I mean, that's an example.
Okay, once again, we can't vote, but I'm certainly going to go through the items if there's any discussion that anybody would like to have. Item A on new business, BP 6.04, learning resource instructional support services, first reading.
I think the presenters aren't here for most of
Right,
these, so.
I'm just gonna go through the items, and if they're not here, then I'll just keep moving along, as I go through the agenda. BP 619, is anyone here to talk about it or present?
I can be available to answer questions, but.
Does anybody have any questions? BP 621? AP 621? Yes, Alan? AP 621.
Last line of the DOE, in the event that the website does not recommend subject to only non-including language as on I understand the sentiment there. Gosh, I can't remember about that.
It would just say public recommendation, that would still be an
Oh,
honorary degree.
let's put it on our degree.
Yeah, honorary degrees would still be an honorary, as a faculty or giving.
Okay. I'm sorry.
That's okay, no worries.
Actually, on 6.21,
Yes,
both
sir.
the BP and the AP, there's a reference to there being an executive session, the board going into closed session to discuss honorary degrees, and there's no legal authority present in closed session. Yeah, so that would need to be deleted, but this is gonna come back for first reading, correct?
Yes.
But
It's just while Deanna's here, if there was some other question.
Yeah.
That was deleted unless we missed one, because that actually was deleted.
Yeah, it's in both, it's in both.
Maybe we missed one.
Okay. See?
Yeah, and in BP, it's the last line. Red. BP 2.1.
Oh, well, what the lead is saying may take place in closed session, and then it says board consider it may take place in executive session.
Which we pulled from the AP, and I don't see it in AP.
Yeah, it's in the AP, because, well, my view, closed session is the term I usually use. Sometimes people say executive session, which is synonymous with closed session.
Okay.
It's not a person.
Brown Act.
Yeah, if you look at in the APD, sub D, it says executive session. So neither of those should be.
Brown Act uses it.
Thank you. Do you have any other questions on that one? Okay, thank you, Deanna and Steve. 7.32, any questions? Yes, sir.
I have a question regarding donations and gifts to directly to college departments. How, I didn't see the language regarding that and how the use or sale or resale of them, how that would be accounted for. If
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay, 7.32.
equipment or
Yeah, I'm really not familiar
But
with
you know
this.
what, if you'll email me, I'll get that clarified. Okay. Budget we did, okay, standing committees, accreditation, we covered, diversity, there was none for this meeting, enrollment management, none, planning, Pam, did you wanna share with us anything, Pam? Hi.
Well, there's a link there for the education master plan, the implementation matrix, the status report on that. We spent a lot of time in the education master plan work group going over it, and I spent considerable time with the academic senate, and it will be presented at the board meeting as well. So rather than belabor it here today, I just want to remind folks that it's there. If you have questions, certainly bring those to me. There was one item that came up in particular with the academic senate, which was wanting to have a better understanding of how some of the center's pathways are developing. So, there are certain things coming out of the discussion just to say, here's an area where there might be, that might warrant more dialogue. That just being one example, and it was connected to marketing, and I know Jeff has marketing information, and there was marketing colloquy on Friday, so just wanted to let folks know that those conversations are, that feedback has been shared and conversations.
Thank you, Pam. Any questions or comments for Pam? Thank you very much. Very good, let's see. Next, moving on to miscellaneous reports and updates. Department chair reorganization. I know that the chancellor is on his way back. Do you want me to move to the next item, or do you want to discuss?
Well, there's a couple people in the audience. I mean, there's a number of people here, but not enough people there, I think. And what this was supposed to be was an overview of how we got to the district reorganization, including, among other items, the department restructuring, which is scheduled to take place in the fall of 2016. It's not a long presentation. If people want me to go through it, I can go through it and do it again another time.
Council, would you?
I think I should at least be able to count. That is especially a hot item.
It's a big item. I mean, it's,
We'll put it on the.
so I'll leave it up to you. When's the next meeting?
Maybe on the top of the agenda. Very good. We can do that. Moving on, marketing. Jeff, do you want to? I know it's a small group, but.
Yes. Do you want me to proceed or?
I'll just say a few words. Hi, everybody. It's the second time that I presented, and both times there were about 4 people left, so I'm trying to take it personally. So I just wanted to give, since I know there's a lot of interest, just a brief update on marketing. We're in the process of organizing a comprehensive presentation to the PGC by Interact Communications, who's our marketing firm, which should happen sometime in June or July. But in the meantime, I just wanted to tick off a few things. As Pam mentioned, there was the latest colloquy last week was about outreach, marketing, and institutional research, which were sort of tied together intentionally to start to surface places where these 3 functions can work more collaboratively together. Just FYI, they're in the process of editing the video, and in that colloquy, Pam, Dr. Participatory, the CEO of Interact, gave a presentation outlining the fall marketing campaign, both in terms of the way in which our institutional research and data is being tied to marketing, and then she also rolled out 4 different marketing treatments or conceptual designs for the fall campaign. I would urge you to, once it's posted, which it should be shortly, urge you to go, if you're interested in the marketing piece, which a lot of people are, to go and watch the video of Pam's presentation to the colloquy. It's about 30 minutes, and then there's, of course, question and answer. It's quite detailed, and as I say, it talks about data, and it also shows the conceptual design treatments for the fall campaign. Last week also, while Interact was here, excuse me, we had 2 student focus groups.
on marketing. We had a faculty focus group. We met with the associated students. We had a good working session with the enrollment management committee. We had about an hour and a half session with institutional research. And then at the end of the week, sent out, hopefully you all saw this, a marketing survey that asked for feedback on the 4 campaign treatments. I understand as of a couple days ago, we had over 150 responses. I hope we get a lot more than that, but that's a good number already. So that information will be used to refine the campaign further. The summer marketing campaigns have been out there for 3 weeks, and if you see it, some people are saying some more stuff, so if you see it, let me know. Mostly it's digital, but that's out there, and our Interact is returning next week to start shooting campaign commercials and advertising and so forth. We expect the fall campaign to be up by mid-June. So we'll have a good, I think that's about 6 to 7 weeks of marketing prior to fall. So that's just kind of a high-level overview. As I say, we are organizing a comprehensive, detailed presentation, but I just wanted to, since there's understandable interest, I just wanted to kind of update on where we are.
Any questions for Jim? Very good, thank you, Jim. All right, item C we covered. Any public comment?
Well, I'm gonna suggest just for the record that I'd like to minutes that we move both marketing and the reorganization to the top of the next agenda so that they get some time, because this is the second very short marketing presentation we've had. We need to keep moving. Marketing at time, yes.
Yeah, I would just like to comment that one of the things I was presenting was the first rough shell of a project plan, which deals with what has to happen, what's been happening in time, and what's going to happen next in terms of planning and the work that has to be done. There's a lot of work to make this organization happen. But one of the steps was we got feedback from the Academic Senate, which we're responding to tomorrow. But I was hoping to present here before we responded, but just so everybody knows, we are going to respond to Senate's input and not wait until we get to present here. I don't know if that would bother anybody, it's just I didn't want anyone to be surprised. I want to be transparent and put on the table that we are going to have regular updates going forward on this issue in terms of input on the planning, and once we start, updates in terms of project management, if we're on track, if we have issues, so forth and so on. So there's been a need to do this on this issue, and I agree with moving it up in the agenda.
It always should be that's the case with this.
Yeah.
Even though it's summer, there's still a hope for some people feeling it.
Yes.
Thank you. Very good. Well, with no further business, before I adjourn, I do want to say that this was one of our action items that we have completed and is ongoing. So per our last meeting, you had wanted us to include on this Delta form whether it was an administrator fact, what constituency group it was, because it would better help us in planning. So please fill this out before you leave, and we can move forward on that action plan. Very good, thank you. So with that, I will call this meeting adjourned at 6:09 p.m. Thank you to those that stayed. Thank you.